Hey, what's up? Thanks for joining us on the Daily Drive as we wrap up this week together. My name is Mike, and we have been diving into a little book in the New Testament of the Bible called the Book of James. The title is the author's name, James, who was a brother to Jesus and one of the leaders in the first church of Jerusalem. And man, this book is full of encouragement and practical wisdom for this journey we call life. You ought to take some time this week and read the whole thing, and then just show up here every day as we kind of break it down into bite-sized pieces. Grateful to have you along for the ride. Well, we're in chapter 3 today, and let me ask you this. You ever been to the doctor and have him or her stick one of those, oversized popsicle sticks in your mouth? I'm talking about the tongue depressor. They grab that thing and say, open wide, and say, right? And when they look in there, they can tell a lot about our health habits. They can see inflammation. They can see gum disease, tonsillitis. They can test gag reflex. They can see early signs of mouth cancer, throat cancer. And if the doctor sees anything out of the ordinary, he or she will say, oh, this is not right. So in this chapter, Dr. James takes the tongue depressor and says, oh, this is not right. This will be our key verse for a couple of episodes, verse number 10 in chapter 3. James writes, and so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth? Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Now, how can praise and profanity and encouragement and criticism, words that bring comfort and words that destroy, how can they come out of the same mouth? This is not right. You see, our words are powerful. When we were kids responding to some kind of ridicule, we would say, the old sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And you know why we said that? Because those words hurt us. It was a convenient lie to keep us from crying in the moment, right? There are some words that can take just seconds to say, but the pain or damage that they inflict can take years, if ever, to heal. I mean, words cut deep. Words can heal, and words can wound. And you and I know that words are powerful. One of my best friends threw out a question on his social media account and asked, what's the most hurtful thing that's ever been said to you? And within hours, he had hundreds of responses, and he shared 5 of those with me. One person wrote, I was 18, and my widowed father, after 9 years of bitterness and verbal abuse, sat me down to tell me he was leaving and said, I don't want to know who you marry, I don't want to know your kids, and I would rather die on the sidewalk than to step foot in your house again. Another person wrote, at the rehearsal dinner the night before my wedding, my mom drank too much, and at the end of the evening said to me, I always liked your brother better. Another person, a mom wrote, I lost my baby boy at 7 months gestation. Less than 2 months later, a friend of mine said to me during a tough grieving moment, hey, we're all sick of hearing about your dead baby. Another person heard these words after 24 years of marriage, I don't love you anymore, I'm in love with somebody else. And one more. Someone wrote, when I was young, my parents had divorced and my mother remarried and had another child with my stepfather. One night after drinking, she came into my room and told me, if it wasn't for you, we would have our nice little family. Those are just 5 of the hundreds of responses he received. Words are powerful. So in James chapter 3, James comes along to talk to you and me about the power of our words. And evidently some of the people he was writing to had some serious problems controlling the damaging words that were coming out of their mouths, because it's a theme he doesn't just speak to in chapter 3. It's a theme that's repeated over and over in this letter. We've already heard him say in chapter 1, verse 19, talking about anger, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to what? Speak. He warns in 1:26, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. He asked in chapter 4, verse 1, what causes fights and quarrels among you? He warns them in 4:11, brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. And here in chapter 3, it's as if James says, open wide and say, and let's just see what your tongue tells us about you, your character, and the condition of your heart. Jesus said it's out of the overflow of the heart that the mouth speaks. What comes out is already in there. So it's not really your mouth that's a real problem here. So we ought to probably spend a couple of episodes talking about this. So let me just read this section for us today, and then next week we'll start breaking it down a bit. This is what James writes, my dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. I think he's saying here, the more you talk, the more you teach. and the more you open yourself up for scrutiny, judgment, and criticism. He's just acknowledging a reality that over 40 years of ministry have confirmed to me. And then he says in verse 2, indeed, we all make mistakes, even teachers do, even especially podcast hosts. And James is even including himself in saying we. He says, for if we could control our tongues, we'd be perfect. It could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No. And you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. So Dr. James uses the tongue depressor, looks inside and says, oh, this is not right. Words matter. There is so much we need to say about this. So come back on Monday and we'll start to unpack it. In the meantime, this weekend, you and I are going to be at ball fields. We're going to be around dinner tables, at church, in traffic, at work, on social media, maybe just hanging around with family and friends. Let's make sure to watch our mouth this weekend. See you back here on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend.